you. The issue now is, following the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the credible death threats that we have received, we are looking at a new artificial cost to do business, and that is high-profile security at our location. This can cost upwards of $2 to $6 million per year, depending on how extensive. I mean, I believe you already know this. I imagine you deal with it similarly. And it was reported that Barry Weiss has to spend, what is it, $10,000 per day for her bodyguards. As a media business, it's totally fine. We can handle the cost of cameras and staff and doing the show, and we all do fairly well. But now you add on the need for 24/7 bodyguards and multiple bodyguards, and that's money we don't have. So this means that Timcast IRL, our nightly show with guests who physically enter the property, we may have to reassess and restructure. That could mean we can't afford to do business this way. My family can't afford this. And especially with the increase in political violence going into a midterm year, we have to reassess the most appropriate way for me to do shows, which means maybe I go into more of a solo slot like I do in my mornings, and we don't do shows that are physical. That's a possibility. We're also having emergency meetings with our partners to figure out a way to, we're looking at economies of scale. Where can we bring in all the personnel to a single location so the cost of security is spread out among 10 people instead of one person, and then we can continue to work. So hopefully it doesn't come to any immediate termination or suspension of Timcast IRL, but that may be the case. We can't handle death threats that turn into physical manifestations, actual shots fired at our property.
No, it's horrific. It's absolutely horrific, and it shouldn't be happening. And like you say, this has real-time consequences for people in terms of protection and security and all the rest of it. And for, not just for you, for your guests, everybody involved. It's outrageous. And for people to trivialize that or doubt it or whatever it may be, just compounds the problem, right? And it just fuels what I think is an increasingly big problem in America of just deliberate disinformation that's being spewed out for money.
I would encourage doubt of all people, of me or of anybody else. The issue is it's not actually doubt. It is zealotry.
Right.
I mean, Andy No, great journalist, got a press release from the sheriff's department where they confirmed that our security called in the reports of shots fired, that a gray sedan had been circling the property. In all fairness, they said that we didn't turn over surveillance footage, so they couldn't substantiate the claims, but the report did happen. We played the audio on our show last night. We don't want to release the footage because it compromises the location of our cameras, security personnel. It shows the layout of the property, which would dramatically worsen an already bad situation. But it's not about doubt. It's about there's no amount of evidence that they are willing to accept because it is cult-like zealotry among people who don't want to believe this is reality.
Tim, I just want to ask you, just before I let you go, just because you've had an experience with this, I just interviewed Nick Fuentes and it blew up massively online. I'm not going to ask you about the interview. I just want to ask you one question, because you interviewed him with Ye, and they walked out and so on. This debate about whether you should platform, whether I should platform people like Fuentes, what do you think about that?
We had Milo Yiannopoulos on, which generated quite a bit of controversy, and I had people criticizing me for hosting him. I think it's sunlight being the best disinfectant. We have to be robust and prepare in our ideas and be prepared for these debates. I actually think you did it is good work that you've done in hosting Nick Fuentes. I think people should interview and challenge him, and I know that you're facing, I don't know what the right word is for it, but people are certainly coming after you now in a negative way because you are willing to do so. I think Steven Crowder did a good job. If you want to interview Candace, Tucker, Milo, Nick, anybody, I think it's appropriate, and this is what we should be doing with these debates and conversations. So I applaud you for doing so.
It does look ugly, but you have to understand it in the context of a very heavily feminized society. I mean, we have speech codes in the workplace. We have exams rewritten to favor girls. I mean, it's not just that women are pulling ahead in university. I mean, women really have, engineered the world against men. And I'm not saying that I like the tone that some of these Zoomers take, but do I understand it? I sure do. I really do understand. A 22-year-old guy today has no realistic prospect of building a life for himself, and no path to being a patriarch, no path to being a husband and father that he can plausibly see. So they're dropping out, they're getting hostile, they're getting bitter. Do I get it? I'll be honest with you, I do. I do understand it.
And what about his racism? He just admitted, yeah, I'm a racist. and then explain why he doesn't want to be walking around near black people and so on. I mean, he articulated perfectly what it is to be a racist, where you want to be away from people because of their skin color.
But don't you think everyone feels a little bit... Don't you think everyone feels just slightly like that? Maybe he's an extreme case in the wake of George Floyd, and perhaps their frustration is with the white liberals that made it happen or whatever. But, I mean, there is a phrase, I hope it's okay that I use a safer version of the word. There's a phrase in America at the moment, Negro fatigue. And it is used to describe people just being sick of hearing about, black people this, black people that, black people complaining, in the wake of George Floyd, which was just the most grotesque absurdity and offence to common sense and to decency.
Do you think it's acceptable? Do you think it's acceptable and decent to use a phrase like the one you just used?
Well, I don't think there's too much wrong with what I just said. I certainly don't wake up in the morning glad that the world is more full of hate. I'm a Catholic, so the most important thing to me is not.
So why would you use a phrase like the one you just used? If you don't want to fuel that kind of thing,
well, I don't think.
Why would you use a phrase that is so inflammatory?
Well, there are much worse versions of that. I was using a sanitized version out of respect for your program.
I doubt the average black viewer watching this, or African American who hears about that, is going to see it that way.
I think they'd rather be called what I said than have somebody who than have white people kind of tied up in knots, not even sure whether they should call them African American or black, because these things are sort of used as a sort of ever-changing linguistic weaponry against one race in society. Look, I mean, you can get waylaid and go down on a tangent about that if you want. What I was trying to explain in an anthropological way, it was explain to you how people are feeling in America, and it's not just 22-year-old far-right racists that feel like this. It's not.
Well, what I'm struggling to do, if I'm honest with you, Milo, I'm struggling to see where you are different to Fuentes, other than you speak in a posh English accent. I mean, you've basically agreed with everything he's been saying, while saying, I don't agree with him.
No, I mean, I think there's a big difference between somebody who is leaning into animosity and hatred of others, and somebody who is observing it happening, sympathetic about the origins, and lamenting the fact that it exists. I mean, I don't think the tone that I'm taking, irrespective of my accent, is anything like the way that Nick talks, and I think the comparison's slightly silly.
Well, because I think you can say
just because I can understand, because I'm empathetic to this group of people, and because I think that now and again they have a point about things, doesn't make me Nick. It means that I can perhaps understand that group a little bit, sort of see where they're coming from in some respects. And making friends with Nick was my intention was if I can have one foot in that world and one foot in the sane world of everybody else, maybe I could help.
Style, right? I think that trying to shame someone like Nick Fuentes for being racist, for being a misogynist, like that's a layup for him. He's already been accused of that, and I don't think it's very fruitful. I mean, I don't want to conflate gotcha with challenging. So I would say, by the way, yeah, if he's going after your family, Nick Fuentes, if you're watching, strongly condemn that from your audience if anything is happening out of line. But I also would say, when the guy makes a good point and says, hey, you know what, my dad's not here to defend himself, could we move on from that? Don't do it 6 more times. But I counted 6 times, and you're not able to get to where you actually have disagreements. See, when I sat down with Nick, and yeah, I played his clips back, people could argue that it was tedious, but I would play a 1.5-minute clip, a 2-minute clip, because I wanted to show it in context. And I was able to actually lay out, we were actually able to contrast our policy, our prescription differences, where people know. And so I think if you go after, father being racist, I don't even know that you would construe his father's being racist because he doesn't like Applebee's. No one likes Applebee's. No one likes Olive Garden.
Hang on. That's not what he said. He literally told the story that his father didn't like that particular restaurant chain or others because they were known for black fare.
Sure.
Well, that's racist.
Black fare? What if people don't like black fare as far as food? What if people don't want to be somewhere where they're more likely to end up in a World Star hip hop video? This is where we get to the issue of you and him discussing per capita. Right? Let me ask you this. Like you're a Catholic. We were talking about this. You said you'd be happy to talk about it. What do you think is going to be fruitful in attacking a celibate Catholic for not getting laid?
I didn't attack him.
You're driving people into his arms.
I didn't attack him.
He said he needs to get laid.
I think he does.
That's a heresy.
I think he does. I think he's an incel.
So I advocate heresy.
I think he's, well, I perfectly understand if you're a devout Catholic, which I'm not. If you're a devout, I was brought up a Catholic and I was given spiritual guidance by Catholic nuns, and a lot of my family are very devout Catholics. I'm not particularly, but I still adhere to, broadly adhere to Catholicism, albeit there are parts of the teachings I don't agree with. So that's my position on it. But I can understand if he'd said to me, the reason I've never had sex.
Then why bring it up, Piers? Why is it relevant whether he's been laid or not? Because I said in my interview specifically, just so you know, I'll answer for everything I say. When I interviewed him, I said, I hate it when people use something that should be seen as a virtue as an attack. Out of all the views, if you view them as reprehensible, and I, by the way, strongly disagree with a lot of Nick's views, the least relevant is whether he's celibate as a devout Catholic. That's like a good thing. And so you actually give him the moral high ground. He says, hey,
had he said
my
to
dad
me,
out of it.
Yeah, but hang on, you're putting up a better defense, if I may suggest, than he did. Because had he said to me, I'm a devout Catholic, and the reason I haven't had sex is because the Catholic Church forbids that and says you should be married before you have sex. Perfectly reasonable answer. That's not what he said. He never said that at all.
So you didn't do your research, because he said that literally dozens of times.
He may have said it elsewhere. He didn't say it to me. I only asked him about that stuff because there is a view that he is what they call an incel, and that he whips up that kind of mentality, and that's why he's such a misogynist about women and so on. It's an interesting thing to ask him. He seemed to me quite happy to answer it all. He was quite emphatic in his answers. Fine. I didn't see that as an attack. I was joking about getting laid because it seems to me he's a very angry guy.
Can I jump in for a second here?
Yeah.
Because this is where I think this is important, right? His audience will. People out there, by the way, some who are voluntarily celibate because they're devout Christians, but also if you look at the dating pool out there, I don't think it's misogyny to say, I wouldn't date one of those young women if they were growing on my ass. And they're actually out there living in a world that's been created. They will identify you as someone who's helped create that, right? Someone who says, I don't care if the UK no longer looks white. I don't care if we lose our cultural identity. Hey, it's great, women's rights. And they're looking at their prospects. And when you say, you're celibate or whatever it is, you haven't gotten laid, you're an incel. Guess what? You give him the moral high ground. When you say, hey, what about your dad? And he asks you, and I will say, he asked pretty respectfully, don't do that. You go on 6 more times. What did you ask about Stalin?
Well, because I thought what he was doing.
You said little twerp.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
You said little twerp.
Stephen, I hear you. I hear you. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, honestly, I'm not, because I've got a lot of respect for you. I think that
Well, thank you.
I think what he tried to do, I think he was taken aback when I revealed that anecdote about his father. And I think he didn't want to address what he actually said on air with that anecdote, because it's pretty damning when you hear it. And I think he decided very quickly, because he's a smart, quick operator, to turn it into me attacking him about his dad who wasn't there and how disgusting and blah, blah. And that's fine, but I kept trying to bring him back. I kept saying, look, it's not an attack on your father.
To his dad.
Well, I wasn't attacking his dad. I was saying, if you tell a story which looks to the world when they hear it, that you're saying your father was racist, can that have an influence on you as you grow up? That was the question I was making. I didn't want him getting off the hook of answering that question about his environment, having heard him in his own words put that story out there.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. In trying to keep him 6 times, and that's what I counted, on the hook for his dad maybe being a racist. Look, if your dad's in the Klan, it couldn't be relevant. It has nothing to do with the price of tea in China, right? What hook would matter?
Well, it is if you openly admit to being a racist,
hold on, asking him about Stalin. And I say this because the last time I was on your show, remember we were talking about Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
And by the way, I would hope that you would be just as hard on Candace and people like Tucker for some of the things that they've said.
Sure.
I think it's fair to be even-handed across the board.
Yeah, I agree.
Stalin, I said I would like to ask him about that, right? Is he a fan? Is he actually an admirer? Or does he just mean to say he's fascinated? What did you ask? You asked him about his dad 6 times. You attacked him as and I don't mean attack him. You present him, but racist, misogynist, right? Stuff that he already knows. That's the playbook. You'll drive your fans into his own arms. What was your question on Stalin?
Well, I asked him.
There wasn't one.
Well, there was actually.
There wasn't one.
No, you're missing.
There wasn't.
No, there was. You just didn't hear it. So I actually brought on a British journalist called Danny Finkelstein, who spent 90 seconds in a video talking about what Stalin and Hitler had done to his family. I did it in the context of him saying Hitler's cool, but Stalin was addressed in that, and he was totally dismissive of a Jewish man talking about his family being annihilated by Stalin and Hitler.
Do you hear yourself? Do you think that you think that's going to be effective or fruitful?
Well, it
Bring
wasn't.
on a guy named
It wasn't.
Finkelstein. No, it wasn't. You didn't ask him. Let me read you what I asked him about Stalin. Okay, because I think a lot of people, you responded saying it was softball. Did you watch the whole interview that I conducted with Nick?
Well, before you read what you're about to read, let me play a little mashup of you interviewing Nick Fuentes, and you can respond to this. Hang on.
Okay, but did you watch the whole interview?
Yeah,
Nick Fuentes, do you hate all Jews, sir?
No, I don't.
Okay. Do you consider yourself an anti-Semite, a noted anti-Semite?
No.
Okay. Clears that up. Do you believe that white people are superior to all other races on the planet?
No.
Okay. Do you want to eradicate all non-whites from the United States?
No.
Okay. Well, Barry Weiss will be very happy to hear that. No doubt she's watching. And then because this happens a lot, right? It's Tucker did this with you. Fed. Nick Fuentes, are you in fact a Fed?
No.
Okay.
I got to say, mate, that's one of the most forensic examinations of interviewing masterclass I think I've ever seen. I mean, the follow-ups were magnificent.
Nick.
Magnificent.
Pierce, did you watch the whole interview?
No.
No, you didn't. Okay, so one of us came here quite a bit more prepared, which seems to be your approach with Nick. So let me read you my exact question on Stalin. Those were layups specifically because, again, I think you and I both agree, right? We want to have reasonable discussions. You don't want to radicalize people.
I agree.
Get rid of the bull crap on the outset so that we could actually get to real differences. And I think here's something that I really pursue when I interview someone: truth and understanding. I asked him about Stalin. Let me read you the exact question later on. It would help if you watched the whole interview. I said, my question to you would be, I know that you've said we want a Catholic theocracy or a Christian theocracy. I've heard the word dictatorship. Correct me if I'm wrong. I would ask you, since the end point seems similar to where Stalin would want us to reach, swap atheism for Catholicism, would you be able to name, or is there any one thing that you think America concretely should copy about Stalin's rule or revolutionary methods to get there? And guess what? We were able to actually answer. We were able to actually discuss it. How many retractions on your show? 0. Quite a few on mine. How many times did we actually get into discussions regarding where we disagree? And let me tell you where I disagree with him. I'm to the right of him on some issues. I'm definitely to the right of him economically. He's a pretty big sort of centralized economy guy, but we did it in good faith. And I presented him with his own questions. We got that out of the way. If you don't watch the whole interview, yeah, you can take 15 seconds. Did you get to any, that was my question. And yours was, well, you never asked about Stalin. He said, do you still think Hitler is fucking cool?
Yeah.
How'd that work out for you? What'd you learn?
That he does.
And that's new? That he thinks they have nice outfits? They're Hugo Boss.
No, but okay, he didn't say that as his reason.
Did you learn about Stalin, Pierce? Did you learn about
I learned this about Stalin. I learned this about
disenfranchised?
As I said to you, I played a clip from a guy who literally lost family members, close family members, to Stalin and to Hitler.
Sure.
And Nick Fuentes' response was to mock him, and then to unleash his groypers on this guy who've been now mercilessly abusing and mocking him about the loss of his family members to Stalin and Hitler for the last 48 hours. Now, you might think that's acceptable, or that somehow I didn't push that hard enough.
This is what legacy media is done. You can't compete. Look, guys like Nick, guys like Andrew Wilson on your show, they've come up. I mean that you were at CNN, HLN for a very long time, and you're still following the same format. And so there, accusing someone young of being racist is a win. But with people who've grown up being accused of racism, of misogyny their whole life, they don't give a shit. And so you should get to the point where you can actually understand. Here's the one thing I would say that would help. Listen. You weren't listening to the guy, so you're not even able to lay out where you disagree, and your own audience.
Well, I don't think you heard that. I don't think you could have heard the whole interview either. Then, I mean, I'm going to go and listen to yours
every
in full.
last second, pillar to post.
Okay, but for 2 hours I talked to the guy. I came with an open mind. I wanted to know whether it was performative, whether he did these things, whether he said things as a joke, whether if he did and it blew up, he regretted any of them, or whether he really means this stuff. And I learned a lot more about Nick Fuentes in the 2 hours than I knew before. You probably knew it all already because you've interviewed him before. I haven't. It's the first time I've ever met him.
I've never interviewed him before. This was my first time I've ever spoken with him or interacted with him whatsoever. I did do my research, and I already knew what his stance was on Stalin. I already knew how he clarified it. I already knew his stance on racism. And here's what I would say, if I'm being as accurate as I can be, right, for the general populace. I think most people if they listen to Nick Fuentes, his views on race and crime, they'd say, okay, someone like that has a case. Certainly any men under the age of 25. I think a lot of people would broad strokes categorize it as anti-Semitic. We were able to get into that. I was able to communicate that I thought Islamic immigration is a greater threat than global Jewry. And guess what? He disagreed, but we understood each other. You don't de-radicalize people by marginalizing everyone who actually makes good points, by spending 6 follow-up questions on a racist
You know
dad,
what?
by
Okay,
accusing them of not getting laid and calling them twerps.
Stephen, here's what I'll concede. Like I did with the initial reaction that you did. I will concede I didn't get him, I mean, other than him saying, I believe now, actually, in a satirical way,